Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg, and today we are joined by Lizz Luker. Lizz, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
It is exciting. Let's just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a mom to 5 beautiful children. We're a blended family, and the oldest just turned 18 on Tuesday. I'm like, I'm too young to have an 18-year-old. And our youngest is 3 years old. We have one together. I had 2 boys myself. My oldest is 11, so we have 4 boys. So the ages are 3 to 11-year-olds and a 13-year-old, and then the 18-year-old daughter.
Wow.
So life gets a little crazy around here in the Luker house. We are just balls to the wall.
Awesome.
all the time, even in our sleep. So I live in Colorado, and I traveled around the country when I was 17 and I was born and raised in California, and the mountains and the ocean have a very special place in my heart. And when I started traveling, I was like, if I'm going to be landlocked, I need to be next to mountains. My ex-husband was actually from here, but we met in a different state, and he brought me here for vacation. And I was like, this is it. This is where I want to move next. A few months later, after moving here, I found out I was having a baby, and then I just stayed. I was like, I guess this is where I'm putting my roots down. So it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun. It's definitely where I'm going to call home until one of my boys move away and start having a family. And then it's like, all right, mom's got to go. I was like, you're not moving too far away from your mother. So if you do, I'm following.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a little bit about me. Well, I own 2 businesses. I started our family LLC last year after my husband resigned from his job, and we were kind of like, what are we going to do? And he's like, I don't want to go back into my field, and I don't like, how would I change my career? Me being me, I was like, well, let's just start our own business and let's follow our passion. And he used to race semi-pro dirt bikes, and I ride, and our kids ride and stuff. And I was like, why don't we just start our own dirt bike company? So we started that, and yeah, it was fun. It was exciting. And then I decided you can't have all the fun. I got to have some fun too. So I started another business, and now I own my own travel agency, and it's been great. It's been busy. And then I got diagnosed with ADHD, and I was like, why not start a podcast?
Because you're not busy enough with 2 businesses and 5 kids.
No. Like I said, balls to the wall.
Yeah. Well, it all sounds beautiful and wonderful now, but the reason you're on this podcast is because it hasn't always been that way.
Right.
So, yeah, let's go back. Tell us a little bit about what was going on when life was not good.
Yeah, I suffer from PTSD, and it was something that happened in the womb. I was born addicted to crank or meth, and the doctors don't know how I survived it. And during her pregnancy, she was like try to miscarry me, and it was just very traumatic from the get-go. My mom and my dad split, and when they split, things just turned for the worse. He ended up being sex trafficked by my mother for her drug addiction. And it was so crazy. Like, when you go through trauma, and I believe when you go through trauma that young, because I was only around 11 and 12 when that was happening.
Wow.
You block it out.
Absolutely.
Your brain takes over, and you go into like this, it goes in this protection mode, right?
Yeah.
And I did not realize what was going on, or even that was what happened to me, until years later. And so dealing with that years later has been real fun, but it explained a lot of stuff. And unfortunately, having trauma from such an early age and not having a very nurturing home and stuff, that was all I knew. So when I became an adult, it wasn't like I was seeking it. It was comfortable now looking back on it, I'm like, oh wow. Then I was young and dumb and was like, whatever, it's just
Yeah,
bad
you
things
don't know
are
any
happening.
different.
And I just kept piling on the trauma. I was like, let's just add another layer on. Let's just add another layer. I went through a share fair of domestic violence and some horrific stuff. And then I met my oldest son's dad, and things didn't work out when my son was about 3. And I was his sole person. He was my heartbeat, I was his heartbeat, and it was always just him and I, even though we were still married. And it was turning into a very toxic, unsafe relationship. And at that point in my life, I was like, something's got to give. And he was just so degrading of women, and I was like, I can't do this. And my son was starting to kind of mimic some of those behaviors. And I had to make a really hard choice to separate myself. And it was like, I'd much rather raise my son in a broken home than raise a son that's raised to degrade women and treat women like this. You've got to take control eventually. That was the moment I took control. And when I did, things got hard. Things got really nasty. Got into a relationship because this guy came and swept me off my feet, and I hadn't been treated like that ever by a man. So I was wooed and infatuated and like, all right, life's going to be great. That wasn't too bad. And then my ex-husband decided to use my PTSD and my trauma as a weapon against me to take away my son. I was at work and I got called to the lobby. I've been in nursing for 13 years at the time. Well, not at that time, but before I started my own business, and I worked in geriatrics, and I was called to the lobby, and I went to the lobby, and a coworker was like, there's a man here to talk to. I've never seen this guy. I never saw this guy. I was like, what is going on? And I didn't have my son at that time because it was his dad's time. And he goes, you've been served. And I was so confused because the divorce had been finalized for a while now. And I had most custody, even though it was set up as 50-50, because he just didn't want to play a huge part at that time. And I was okay with that. And I was a single mom living in Denver on a very tiny income. And I made just over the limit to get state assistance. My family's non-existent at this time. I have no friends or family here because I was a single mom just working my butt off. And I opened that envelope and it said emergency orders to take my son. And I was just so, there's not a word to describe that feeling.
Yeah. I can't even imagine.
I remember hitting the floor and my coworker running up to me and took the paperwork from me. And I remember the look on her face, and they helped me up and got me out of there. And we sat there and we read over it together. And the accusations that were made against me was horrid. Because of my past with my own mother, I always said if I became a mother, I would do everything in my power to protect my children.
Of course.
I would break these, trauma, and I forgot how they say that. And I was just so confused and so heartbroken and scared. I was really, really scared. And I remember going back to my apartment that night, and I already have demons, and now they're screaming at me. And I fought like hell. I couldn't get a lawyer. Unfortunately, the county that the court case is in it's a big county in Colorado, but the population is low and there was only one family lawyer. And he got the best lawyer in the county who also plays golf with the judge, and he has money and name that is known in that county. And I'm a nobody. I have no money, I have no name, I have nothing. I had nothing but just the fight in me for my son. And I worked so many hours. I would work 16, 18-hour shifts, and I would sleep in the parking lot. And sleep for 6 hours and then go right back. Like, I was just doing anything and everything I could. I was begging my family for financial help, and the judge ordered a child family investigator, and I was like, he wants it, and he's not wanting to meet me in the middle with mediation, then he's going to have to pay for it. Well, that was the biggest mistake of my life. He hired a very nasty CFI. I did a lot of research on the CFI, and to find out, had restraining orders against him from his ex-wife and his children, so I'm just like, oh my God, like this is not happening to me right now.
Right.
And then they come and do the investigation, and I remember right before, like, getting ready for that investigation, because they come into your house, they look around, they watch you play and interact with your child, then they will ask your child some questions without you there. And I remember begging people to help me fill up my cupboards and fridge, because I would go without eating just to make sure he ate.
Of course, yeah.
And to make sure I had a roof over his head. And so we go through all that, and the CFI kind of assured me, or his assistant, not the CFI, his assistant that was putting all the paperwork together and stuff, and getting the case ready, or the folder or whatever, reassured me. She goes, it sounds like you're going to actually end up with full custody. And I was like, God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Like, all right, like, yes, like someone sees the truth. Someone sees, that he's safe. And they didn't get the report in on time, and so I had to wait like another 3 or 4 weeks. Still couldn't really see my son, could barely talk to him on the phone. And finally the report comes out, and they recommended I had no custody time. They said I was unfit because I suffered, and it shows it in the report, I am unfit because I suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was so angry. I'm like, okay, so all of our veterans that come home fighting for our freedoms, they come home with PTSD. What are we going to do? Start yanking their kids too? Deadbeat dads that, are in and out of jail and on the street selling drugs and whatever, they still get to keep their 50% custody. What the hell? I was so exhausted. I was so devastated. We went back to court, and the judge was like, we're going to have to take this to trial. I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to afford trial? How am I going to afford to take that time off work and still keep a roof over our head so I can bring my baby home?
Right.
I still fought. I fought pretty hard for a little longer. And my ex-husband came to me. He goes, I'm surprised you held on this long. And I said, that's my baby, and I will do anything for him.
Yeah.
I will do.
He just expected you to just give up and crawl away.
Yeah. And I was like, you should know me better than that. He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, you signed the orders that the CFI is recommending, and you proved to me that you're a safe home for him, and we will reinstate the 50% custody. I'm like, okay. I was like, fine, you win. I'm exhausted. And I remember signing the papers that day and just bawling. It's been 8 years, I think, since then. And I still only get to see my son 4 days out of a month, if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky. I have to still bend to his rules. I still have to kiss his ass, because if I try to stand up for myself, I don't see my son for months.
Yeah.
And he can do it. And I can't explain the despair. I cannot explain what that was like. I just know it drove me into that feeling of, then what's my purpose? What am I doing here? Why am I alone? Why does it hurt so bad? And all these things. And, I already have demons. I'm already spicy enough in there. Add this. And remember the type of mother I have. So now I believe that I am just like her.
No.
And now I'm reliving all that trauma. And it became too much. And I took a bottle of pills. I got in the bathtub, because I love taking my baths. I got in the bathtub and I swallowed that whole bottle. I remember just crying and shivering. And then the next thing I remember is waking up in the hospital. And I remember telling the doctor I want to go home. And they're like, you're not going home. You ain't going nowhere besides a 72-hour hold. I'm like, that's fucking great. And I guess I had called a friend and she knew what kind of state I was in. And she had called 911 and they had gotten to me just in the nick of time.
Good.
And I remember sitting in that mental ward thinking about my mother again, because my mother's got bipolar and schizophrenia, and she had been in and out of those type of facilities. And I remember looking at these people and I'm like, you know what? I am not batshit crazy. Someone took something so personal and so painful. They took my broken pieces and they just turned them into dust. That's what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Not that I'm an unfit mother, not that I am my past or my trauma. And so I get out of the hospital, I put my pieces back together slowly, and then I wasn't getting anywhere. I just hurt so bad.
Yeah.
And then when I was in the hospital, I remember thinking to my son, it was like, his story can't have that in it. And it is my responsibility to make sure of that.
Yeah.
So I started fighting for myself, but it was just too much. And so then I turned to alcohol and then I turned to drugs and I just kept going and going and going. And I remember going to a doctor's appointment and I'm like, hey, look, I don't know if I have an issue or not, but I'm pretty like, what's your opinion? He goes, oh no, you have an issue. And they did my blood work and they're like, if you don't stop, you're going to kill yourself. It's going to be sooner than later. And I was like, oh God. And I thought of my son again. And I was like, this can't be his story. This cannot be his story. And I went years in my adult life without ever touching drugs. I went years without letting things like alcohol mask the pain of my childhood and my adult trauma. But there was nothing that could mask that pain that I felt after going through that with my son. Nothing. It was just shattering. And so, as I was healing, I started hearing that mothers were suffering and mothers were getting told it's just a phase, or take this pill, or you're not doing enough for yourself, or, their mental health being weaponized against them too. And I was like, I gotta do something. I can't imagine another mother going through this and not surviving. And so I'm like, but what am I gonna do? I don't have an education. I don't have money. I don't have a name. I'm a nobody. I found my voice and I've learned how to use it. And I learned how to not just survive, but thrive. I rose from the ashes. I literally rose from the ashes. And I just can't let it go anymore. And so now I'm on a mission to change how it kind of works. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I started a Facebook page for resources for moms, because in that type of situation, I understood that if I was all these things that he was saying I was, and I did all the things that he said I did to get the emergency order just to take him from me in the first place.
Right.
And the judge let him come back to me and something happened to that child, that blood would be on the judge's hands. So I understood the process and I understood why we had to go through the process. But in the middle of that process, there was no support from anything or anyone. There was no resources. There was no support. There was no are you doing okay? What can we do? Nothing. There was nothing. And that's not okay, because when you put a mother in a situation like that, what do you think's going to happen? And so I'm out to change that. I'm out to give those mothers a voice and give them the resources, help them find the resources and hold their hand through it and let them know, like, yes, it's going to be a long, hard battle, but we got you. I got you. I'm here.
Beautiful.
You're not alone.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. So that's how I started sharing my story on my own personal podcast called Chaos and Coffee Beyond the Mom Bun. And I want it to be a place where moms can go to relate and be like, oh my God, I'm not crazy, and get that encouragement to find that voice again inside them and say enough is enough and I'm going to stand up for myself.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
Wow. Wow. Just wow. You've been through so much. How did you stop the substance use?
Well, when the doctor told me in that first appointment that if I didn't stop, I was gonna meet my maker sooner than later. I was like, then what do we do? And he's like, you need to probably go to detox because of how much I was drinking at a time. And so I went to detox. And when I got out, I realized my living situation was not a safe place for my recovery.
Okay.
So I was like, peace out. I went to sober living. I lived there for a few months. And then I met my beautiful husband. And I guess it was the addict and alcoholic in me was like, peace out again. And ran off into the sunset. And then ended up finding myself back in my addiction. Did the whole detox thing again. And when I got out of that, I found another substance to use. And I'm like, geez, something's not working here. And
Right.
I ended up going to detox again to go to rehab. And the last time I went to detox, they said it was pretty bad. I don't remember detox at all. The nurses said that they were actually really, really worried that I wasn't going to make it through detox, that I was going to be sent to ICU. And I think at one point they did send me into the hospital. And I went to rehab and I just did it. I was like, I have to do this. I think it being so bad that third time was just enough for me to say, oh, and I can't sit here and say I'll never drink again, because you don't know. You just don't know. But I do know that I'm in control of my recovery. I'm in control of those broken pieces of my trauma. And, there's pieces of me that was taken from me and I didn't have control over that.
Right.
But I have control over today.
Yes.
And that's empowering to have these things taken from you, to have control over something again. And so, I've been sober for almost 2 years and I've been through it. It's a beautiful story in a way of the pain we can actually go through. Survive. And my story is not for me. My story is for that mom that needs to hear it. I look at it this way now. I have two options here. I have the option to leave a financial legacy behind for my kids, which who doesn't want to leave that? And that was the road I was on when we started our businesses. I was like, you know what? I want to leave that legacy behind for my kids, like a financial legacy. And I'm still on that mission, but what means the most to me is not that legacy. It's the legacy that my mom spoke up. My mom rose from those ashes, endured undescribable pain, survived it, and then went and saved someone else. If I could just save one more mom, I will die the wealthiest woman on this planet. And so that's my mission now. And that's why I'm so open about my story.
Yeah, so much just strength and resilience. And I know I always get upset when people are like, oh, you're so strong, you're so resilient. And it's like, well, I didn't really have any other choice if I wanted to still be here, But we didn't give up. You didn't give up.
Right.
through everything you went through, from your attempted suicide through all the detox and the detox and the detox and like that, not just mentally and emotionally demanding, but also physically. And you
Yes.
survived that too. And you're here and you're doing amazing things.
I'm trying. Yeah, it took a toll on me physically. I'll probably never be the same physically, and that's heartbreaking. Especially now chasing or around a 3-year-old. Yeah, and he is feral. So I did lose a lot, but I also gained a lot. And it is incredible of the fight you have inside of you when you have no other option. And when, like you said, when people say, "Oh, you're so strong," or "You're so resilient," it's like, yeah, I am. I am. However, I did not choose that.
Exactly. That was the option I was given.
Yeah, it's like you're dealt your cards, and we're not always dealt the greatest hand. And it's okay, how are you going to play that hand? What are you going to do with that hand?
Mhm.
And I knew from an early age that I wanted to change. I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in the world, that needed to happen in the world. And I think that is what kept me kind of grounded in the midst of it all, and kept me, still kind and compassionate and loving. But it hasn't been easy. I mean, I'm a firecracker. If I get poked a certain way, I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
So
Good. What advice would you give to somebody who is currently in despair?
just hang on a little longer. And it's okay to stop for a minute and breathe. It's
Yes.
okay to rest. It's okay. It's okay. And just hang on a little longer and take a break if you need to. Just don't stop fighting.
Yes. Yes. Love that. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and your experiences and inspiring others to do the same.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.